Hello.
Hello, Betsy.
Hey, how are you?
I'm fine. Bit sleepy.
Yeah.
Why do you have events so early? Who comes to something in 9:30 a.m.?
People do. Yeah. Also, the session is already recording, just so that we know. That's
I
fine.
know.
Yeah. So we have Minyan at 8:15. So those people are up. And we're more of an early community than a late one. So
Well, that's great.
yeah, mid-morning on a Sunday tends to work for people. So here's hoping. Looks like we've got a couple signing in right now. I'm going to change my name here. I came in as the synagogue, I guess. Mazal tov, also, again, on your ordination.
Thank
Great.
you.
You're welcome. It's really cool. Is there movement on your visa for the Canada shul?
There is, but it's not radically significant. Like I don't have visa yet.
Okay.
So
We have a few people here. Francie Sopaznik and Alisa Pollock. Alisa's our executive director, and right now she looks like a star of people, but hopefully we'll see a face. Alisa's not an early morning person. Neither am I, but I'm up for Minyan. And Louise or her partner, Bruce. So good. That's a start. I know at least one other who's coming. And remember, we're not a big shul. So a small group can be very powerful around here.
I don't have any, number expectations.
Okay. And we're also
if one person comes and want to be here and want to, participate in the conversation, that's enough.
wonderful. And there's we're recording it is what I meant to say. So there have been some requests for the recording, people who already knew that they couldn't hear you but wanted to hear you later.
We would love to show our faces, but we're eating breakfast.
Bon appetit.
So if you don't mind watching us eat, we'll be happy to turn on the camera. Rabbis, it's up to you.
I may be eating soon too.
I think we're both okay with you eating, and we'd love to see your face.
Yeah,
Hello.
good morning.
Good morning.
And Bruce is here too. We're actually feeling incrementally better.
I'm so glad.
I've been up for 2 hours and I'm still up. This is progress.
Wow. Okay.
Good.
Good. Well, may it continue. Yeah. Every strain is different, but I've heard from several, and myself included, that for some, it can be a good month of being completely exhausted. And for me, it was. I would go to bed very, very early and wake up exhausted, and sleep all night and wake up exhausted. But then it does pass.
Yeah, I just don't remember what it's like to exercise.
No, I understand.
Or do anything.
I'm sure that feels far away. Yeah. Hey, Mike and Patrice.
So
Hello.
Hi, nice to see you.
Thank you. You too. You too.
Wow.
Thank you, Francie. Thank you for that delicious challah on Friday.
I'm glad you enjoyed.
Oh my God.
And it makes terrific French toast, by the way.
Didn't get that far. Didn't get that far. We just ate it.
I'm so happy Benji's here. So my son and our colleague.
Hi, I'm just making breakfast, so then I'll be on video when I'm done, but it's good to be here.
I have to get
Fine.
my-
You can join others who are in various stages of breakfasting.
I'm about to give my kitty a little bit of medicine, but otherwise I'm okay.
Rabbi Zilberstein.
Yes.
My grandmother was from Kiev.
Sorry?
My grandmother was from Kiev.
Oh, when
She
did
left
she?
in 1913. She lived on Bolshaya Vasilkovskaya.
Yep, still exists.
Yeah.
It's in
Oh,
the
I
center of the Kiev.
Right.
My grandfather was from Odessa.
Do you know where? Like which part?
No. It was
Oh.
a shtetl near Odessa, my grandfather.
That's where Mark's grandfather was from.
I'm going to get matzah.
I'm just reading the biography of Yitzhak Rabin, and either he or his wife's family was from Kiev. So it's so fascinating to read things, that happened so long ago, and now the connection means even more.
Mhm.
It's an old city. It's a Jewish community of Kiev, I would say it's more than 1,000 years old.
Hmm.
You know, a quick, interesting fact that Kiev is first mentioned, the first document in the history of the city that actually mentions the name of city, Kiev, is actually a Jewish document. It's a Jewish letter.
Oh,
It's a letter. Yeah, it's called Kiev letter, and it's a letter of the members of Jewish community. They are trying to find money. Well, that's also, I guess, the same theme. They're trying to find money to buy the freedom of one of their, fellows who got into some kind of a debt, and he was like imprisoned or something like that. So someone apparently is traveling from community to community with this letter and trying to raise money for that person to let them free. And it ended up, this letter, in Cairo, Geniza, and that's why we have it. So it went all the way to Egypt. And yeah, so this is it says that we are the Jews of Kiev, where such and such person got into prison. And that's the first historical evidence of the existence of Kiev. So
Could I ask a question about the pronunciation? I hear on the news, it's sometimes pronounced Kiev, as my family pronounce it, and sometimes it's pronounced Kiev. And does that depend on where you're from?
yeah, so Kiev is a Russian pronunciation. So that's why it's the most common. This is how it's pronounced in Russian. But the other pronunciation, it's supposed to represent how it's pronounced in Ukrainian. So it's Kyiv, but nobody can pronounce it either. So the second one is basically just the wrong one. But it's a wrong one that wants to sound like a... Sorry, I have so that wants to sound like a good one. Give me just 1 second.
That's fine. You know what? How about if I take a minute to introduce Rabbi Zilbershtein, even though she has stepped off for just a second, and I'll do that slowly so she can hear herself being introduced and jump right in. I want to welcome everybody and thank you so very much for coming and joining. This is a really nice turnout for us on a Sunday morning, and I'm really so grateful to you. I met Rabbi Zilberstein my first summer at JTS. We shared an apartment together. We weren't in classes together, but we were in the same very small summer learning environment, and we would start the day in tefillah together. And it actually took us some time to get to know each other. And she was one of the greatest discoveries for me during my time at JTS. And I moved on in my journey, and my son Benji, who's here with us, then started attending JTS, and he then became one of the students who was involved in, who had regular interactions with Rabbi Zilberstein. So I'm going to read her bio now and formally introduce her, and just say that it's really wonderful to have this connection. And I'm just so pleased that you all will have the opportunity now to hear from her, to get to meet her, and to engage in what she's bringing us today. So Rabbi Alisa Zilberstein is a graduate of JTS. And before she studied there, she taught history of Jewish philosophy at the National University of Kyiv. I don't know how to say it, Mohyla Academy.
Mohila, yeah.
Mohyla Academy in Ukraine. Rabbi Zilberstein lived in Kyiv, Ukraine, where her partner Victor was born. And she intends to return to Ukraine to serve as a rabbi as soon as it is safe to do so. Since the first day of the war, she has been doing everything in her power to help people caught in the horrific situation there. Her family is in Kyiv right now. Many friends are living there. Rabbi Zilberstein is inviting all of us to learn about the current situation in Ukraine from someone who really is an insider, and to come to some understanding of the international networking of volunteers who are working tirelessly to save people there, literally keeping people alive. Welcome, Rabbi Zilberstein.
Thank you for the introduction. And thank you so much, everyone who came to this video meeting and conversation about Ukraine. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for finding time in your life to come here. And so, is it possible if, okay, great. So let me just tell you a little bit about our plan and how we're going to go from here. So I think I'm going to talk about the situation in Ukraine, the Jewish community. My work is about like 20-25 minutes, and then we'll have time for questions. So if you have questions, you either can put them in the chat. If you have like questions while I'm speaking and you forget that you're afraid that you'll forget it, and you can type it in the chat or just hold it and then ask when we have time. So as Rabbi Betsy just read in the, I'm still struggling of like Rabbi Forster. This Rabbi Betsy just read in the introduction, since the first day of the war, I was very involved in the volunteer work, helping people in Ukraine. Today is 109 days of the war. So, and I know that because I count days every day. I have a special calendar on my wall where I cross out every day. So I know, and every day I count how many days have passed. And I say that it's 109 days since the beginning of the war. This is not actually correct, because it's more than 8 years since the beginning of the war. And it is a much longer process. It didn't start 100 days ago and 109 days. It was started 8 years ago. But for various reasons, it was not being used that much. It was a smaller scale, like people didn't talk about it. But 109 days ago, the full-scale invasion of Russia into Ukraine began. And I remember before that, I would tell people, there is a war in Ukraine, a war between Russia and Ukraine. A lot of people just didn't know about it. Like, they didn't, like, what war? Like never heard about it. Like, the situation, of course, has changed drastically. And it's hard to estimate how many people died already in this war. It's like, say, 100,000 people. We know, depends on the count, maybe 6 million people are refugees right now. There are probably around maybe 5 million people who are like internally displaced within the country. So these are huge numbers. And the change of this, the life of these people changed. to the degree that it's really hard to kind of process and hard to explain. And the people who are in Ukraine, of course, the life is different. It's never going to be the same again. It is a major change, and this is a major trauma, and the trauma that continues because the war continues. We're not like in the middle of the war. We're not in the beginning of the war. We are in the war, and we don't know how long it's going to continue. And life of everyone else who is connected to Ukraine, with people outside of the country, people in different parts of the world, their life also changed. And obviously my own personal life has changed, because when the war began, I stopped doing everything else. All my life is just dedicated 100% to this kind of volunteer work. And the volunteer work is possible because there are a lot of people who want to help. And these people, again, all over the world, they're coming together, not organized by any, official organization or structure, just volunteers, people who want to do something, people who want to help, people who want to save other people. And all of us, we are working for free. We're not a part of any organizations. We're very grassroots. And I never collaborated with any organization since the beginning of the war. And I figured out that it's actually a very effective way to help people. But, none of us had an experience like that. We didn't know what to do. The war began 109 days ago. And what are you going to do? In my life, there was never a war before. And it's not something that I was taught in, rabbinical school, how to behave in this horrific situation. And obviously none of my friends. And I know that our attitude towards war, it's culturally different, because we're in Europe. There is, of course, a memory of the Second World War, a memory of Holocaust that is very present in our lives. For us, Holocaust is very, very close to us. And the Second World War is close. It feels like it happened recently. In United States or in North America, of course, it's a little bit different perspective, because here the war never happened kind of on this particular land. It happened, a bit far away from the United States. Exactly, right? But as I was thinking, the kind of a parallel that I came up with is, like, imagine that there is a kind of a natural disaster, like a hurricane. There are a lot of hurricanes in the United States. Or imagine that there is a hurricane that is lasting for 3 months. And every day it's destroying houses, and every day it kills people. And it's ongoing. And it's for 3 months, every day there is a hurricane. And it keeps destroying everything on its path. And since the beginning of the war, there are communities that are gone. There are cities that are ruined, completely disappeared, nothing left of them. And this is how it continues. And it's, as I said, as we speak, it continues. The hurricane, it continues. And more people are fleeing. More and more houses are destroyed. More and more people are killed. And I think that the war is the most horrible thing that can happen to people. I think there is nothing worse than that. Exactly for what I said, because hurricane, it comes and go. It cannot last that long as war can, but it feels kind of the same. You cannot control it. It's something horrible that happens, and there is no way to control it or to stop it. And you just have to kind of find your way to go through this and do what you can while you are inside this hurricane. So, but I'm very fortunate, though it sounds very controversial. What does it mean to be fortunate? I'm fortunate because I'm a member of Jewish community. And Jewish community, actually, in this kind of situations, turns out to be very effective. And I am blessed to be a part of this community, because as a part of this community, I have real ways how to help people. And I'm still, there's not enough time has passed for me to reflect on exactly how that works and why is it so effective. But my guess is that because for the centuries, we kind of preserved this experience of going through wars and catastrophes and tragedies and all of that. And we already have some kind of mechanisms of how to deal with that and how to help each other. So when the war began, for example, a lot of people needed immediate evacuation. So this was the first thing that I had to deal with, is that there were a lot of people who were running away from the cities that were, very fast occupied by Russia. So people were like fleeing very, very fast. And of course, a lot of them went abroad to Europe, for example. And I started to talk to people when the war broke out. I would start messaging people. I'm always on my phone and every day. And now also the phone is here, and I message people and said, like, how can I help? What do you need? And a lot of people needed a place to stay in Europe, because they left the country really fast and they didn't have a place to live. So this is the first time when I started to reach out to my Jewish community. I am a member of the institution. It's called PAIDEA, the European Institute for Jewish Studies. It's a major Jewish institution in Europe. It is located in Sweden and Stockholm. And I am an alumna of this institution, and I kind of worked for them for some time. I was a chairperson of the community alumni network. That is how I know a lot of Jews in Europe. So what I did is that I started to message my friends and people that I know, my colleagues, everyone whom I knew from that institution in particular. And I said, like, I have this family, they're coming to like Czech Republic. Can you help me to find for them place to stay? And people found a place to stay very, very fast. And that's how I realized, okay, this is what I can do. I can find accommodations for people. And again, really, really fast, this kind of groups of people, they started to organize themselves in groups, in chats on the internet, where they would, kind of collaborate and dedicate their work to something specific. Either there would be a Jewish group about evacuation, so they would provide information about evacuation and help to find transport and accommodations. Or there would be groups, for example, local groups, such and such city. For example, a group in Berlin, there's like a group in Dresden, there is a group in Wrocław, for example, there is a group in, in Prague, depends on the city, right? And such groups also emerged very fast within Ukraine. So there would be a group for Kiev, there would be a group for Kharkiv, there would be a group for Odessa, and then there, a lot of different groups also kind of appeared, and that would be, volunteer groups where volunteers would find each other and share information. Or this would be groups about news, where they would collect news about specific city. And this system, I think it's the first time in the history of, in the world history, in the history of humanity, so how technology actually really helped people to organize all of that, because it's very fast. Okay, I'm in New York right now, but effectively I do the same work as if I was in Kiev, because I'm doing everything online. I'm communicating with people through my phone. Doesn't matter where am I located physically. It doesn't kind of affect the productivity of my work. It doesn't really matter. That's all because of the internet. So in the Second World War, obviously there was no internet. There was no way to communicate with people fast. There was no way to find transportation fast. There was no way to send things fast. So now it's all really fast, and people can do that without waiting for some organization to come and tell them what to do. People just come together and they do a really, holy and godly work. So let me give you some examples of how that's done. For example, but this is I'm telling you the real step-by-step kind of a process. So I have a friend, and his name is Michał, and he's a Jewish friend. He's from Wrocław in Poland. So he messages me and he says, I have a friend who needs help. Can you help her? And I say, of course I can help her. I don't know yet what to help, but this is the first stage. You always say like, we need some kind of help, and you say, yes, I can help. So then he says, okay, can I give you contact to this person? I say, yes. So this person reaches out to me. Her name is Malvina, and she says, I have a friend who needs help. Can you help? I'm like, yeah, sure, I can help. And then she says, yes, so this is a friend. His name is Nazar, and he lives in Berlin, but he has grandma. She is 85 years old, and she lives in Kramatorsk. And Kramatorsk is a city in Ukraine. And she says she's lonely. There is no other relatives there. She lives there alone with 3 cats. And at that time, we knew that Kramatorsk is going to be occupied soon by Russian army because it was approaching. So it was very, very close. And so Nazar didn't want his grandma to, get stuck in the occupied city because she is already very vulnerable, on this respected age of 85 years old. And he said, I want to evacuate her, but she, she cannot go herself to the train station. She cannot, find transport herself. So we need to find transport. And I say, okay, I know how to do that. And I reach out to my friend whose name is Attila. And Attila is from Turkey. And he used to live a lot in Ukraine, but he's, he's Turkish man. But he's very good at finding transportation. And I don't really know how he does that because everyone has own talent. So his talent is finding transportation. And I say, Attila, we need to evacuate this woman, 85 years old, from Kramatorsk. And the family decided that they want to move her to a different city also within Ukraine. It's called Kremenchug. Not that important, but the idea is that in that city, there are some relatives and friends who can take care of her. So she's not completely alone. And he says, okay, so what can we do? We can find a transport for her, like a taxi that would take her to the train station in Kramatorsk. We put her on the train, and then in Kremenchug, the relatives going to, meet her there and take her from the train station to their, home, to a safe place. And so we talked to Nazar, the grandson, and he says, I think it's too difficult for her. In her condition and her health, it's too difficult for her to travel by train. Are there other options? And so we discussed it, and Attila said, okay, we'll find a car. So he found a car specifically for this lady. So the car came to her apartment, put her in a car, and drive her to Kremenchug. It's a different city, it's pretty far away, but like the driver took her from place A to place B safely. So she went there, and next day after that, the train station of Kramatorsk was bombed. It was shelled by Russia, and 50 people died at this train station. So she could have been one of them, because we were discussing if she, if she's going to go by train or by a car, and Nazar made a decision not to send her by train. But otherwise, we would really bring her to the train station, and she would be at the train station. She would be dead, probably, or injured. It's just one story of how all of those people are coming together. But like 5 people, including myself, 5 people located in different parts of the world, with all absolutely different cities. We never met together like in one place. Like, for example, I would know Michał, he knows Malvina, but like I never met all of those people together. We never met as a unit together, but we worked together. And for this one case, we saved one person who is now is Kremenchug, and everything is fine. But this is just one story, and this story is there like happening every day, and it's a very kind of it takes all of the energy and all of the time, and there's nothing else actually that this kind of a volunteer can do. But people really dedicate their lives to that because they know that, okay, I will just answer some messages and I'll find transportation, and I'll save someone's life. So this is one kind of a part of that. Transportation evacuation. The other thing is that I do a lot as a financial help to people when I just send money directly to people who are in Ukraine, and sometimes to the refugees who are in different countries. And this is the most effective way to help people that ever existed, I think, in our lives. I know it's not that emotionally appealing as like sending, clothes or, some kind of supplies, but this is very effective. So every day I'm sending money to people. And again, how I find these people, it's similar. It's kind of a similar situation with how this evacuation happened. I know people who find people who need help, and they would, give me their contact information on where to send money, and I send money. So I'm trying to send money every day, at least some, small amount of money. Of course, I don't have a lot of money to send to thousands of dollars to one person. So I typically would send like $100, for example, per person or per family. And people need this money to buy food most of the time, food and medications. So these things, we cannot send them from United States. These things, it's not effective actually to send them from here, because it's much cheaper to buy food in Ukraine than to buy it here and send it to Ukraine. It will be very long, and the other also never can guarantee what people get in the end, and there is a lot of logistics. So sending money is the most helpful and effective way, and that's what I do. Collect information with people who need help, find money, obviously, to do that, and to transfer that money. And again, within this process, I found a lot of new friends and people who are like within this, again, 109 days, we already kind of developed our system of like who is finding what people, who needs help. And sometimes these are just individuals. Like I have a lot of single moms with children. And, typically they lost their job because of the war. They don't have money for food. They need baby food. They need, medications. They need, things for babies or for children. And they have no income at all. So I send money to them. I also have an access kind of to a sort of a database of families who have special children with special needs and disabled children. And this is a very complicated and tricky operation because all of them are located in the occupied territory. So are they in the territories that are now completely occupied by Russia? So there's no way to send any humanitarian goods there. There's like, it's completely blocked. And there are some kind of complications in sending money there, but we found a way how to do that. So I have this list of families with special children, and I would send money again to them per family. I also help shelters for animals, animal care. We have, mini zoo, shelters where abandoned animals are now kind of being rescued, because a lot of people, they had to flee and they did not have an opportunity to take their animals with them. Because again, to travel with an animal, you need a special, documentations. Typically the countries, foreign countries, they do not accept your pets without documents. So they need to be vaccinated, they need to have special passports. So if you don't have that, you probably cannot take your pets with you. So, or people ran away so fast that they couldn't take their their pets, or people ran away and couldn't find their pets because of the explosions. And, there's a lot of noise and sound and panic. So sometimes animals just run away, and the owners cannot find them, and then they have to. So we have a lot of abandoned animals. So I also help those shelters, for example. There are people who, for example, they need money for special medical treatment. We have people with cancer, for example. They obviously, again, they lost all of the sources of income, and in the time of the war, it's very hard to find medications. It's very hard to arrange, for example, with surgery if that's needed. So this is also where a lot of money goes. I have kind of again, list of people who are Jewish scholars. These are the people who preserve our Jewish history and heritage and in Ukraine. So these are either Jewish scholars who are Jews, like I used to teach, for example, the history of Jewish philosophy. So I'm a Jewish scholar in the field of Jewish philosophy. So I'm both Jewish and I'm both teaching something about Judaism and Jewish culture, right? So we have people like that, either Jews or, specialists who are archivists. people who work in archives, professors who study Jewish history, right? And or Jewish scholars as they are Jews themselves. And also they lost job. Of course, there's no like teaching happening right now, so they have no sources of income. So again, then I'm have some kind of part of money allocated to that. I'm trying to help those people as well. So there are a lot of other like smaller, again, more individual projects. For example, not yesterday, 2 days ago, I spoke to a lady whom I also know a little bit and maybe met her once, but like I know her online more than in real life. And she said, we have a family, mother, father, and a child, and the child is 5 years old, and the family is from Bucha. And Bucha, if you saw that on the news, it's one of the cities that were occupied by Russia. But then when the Russian forces left the city was deoccupied, and the whole world learned about the horrors that happened there, about tortures and rapes and all of the the absolutely terrible treatment of people who live there. So this is a family from that city. So they lived there when there was occupation, and then when it was liberated, they left, and they cannot go back. First of all, their home, the house where they lived, is partially destroyed, but also they cannot go there because the Russian soldiers, they used to live in their house. So what happens during the war is that the soldiers, they would come into an empty building, and they would like locate, they would bring their supplies there, and they would like sleep there, and they would live there for some time. So because the Russian soldiers lived in their apartment, for a mother, she cannot go there. It's like some trauma, psychological. She cannot be in the space that was kind of defiled by Russian soldiers. So she cannot go there, and they stay in Lviv right now. And they say, first of all, they needed money, so I sent them money, but also they needed a place to stay. And it's very hard to find an apartment in Lviv because there are so many refugees there. And we said, like, what if we move them to a different city where there is where it's easier to find a place for them to stay? But they said, we cannot move because we have this baby, 5 years old, and he's traumatized by all of that. And this is the first time, like, when he started to feel safe. So we cannot relocate him because we will traumatize him again. So we want to find a place in Lviv. So after all, I did not find a place for them to stay in Lviv. I only sent mine, but the other person found a place for them to stay in Lviv. So they're now staying there. So stories like that and work like that. And the last thing I'm going to tell you, the last kind of a big direction of my work, which is the most complicated actually to talk about. So I'll tell you, and then we will go to the questions. So the big part of my work is actually support for army. And this is, again, this is not that appealing, I guess, to people as a help to families with children or elderly people, because army is perceived as like something that is taken care of. It's like if you read news on the news, it's like I read it so often that such and such country sent these weapons to Ukrainian army. Such and such country said there's like millions of dollars or euros to this country, to Ukraine. So it appears on the news like Ukrainian army is very well financed and has no problems, which is not true, because on the ground, like real soldiers, they have a lot of problems with supplies. Like they often don't have food. They often don't have, shoes. They don't have protective armor. So we need to buy helmets and bulletproof vests for them, gloves, shoes, as I said, food, all of those things. So I have people, and I very clearly separate these matters, like humanitarian needs and army needs, but it's a big part of my work. I'm very supportive of Ukrainian army, because without them, there will be no Ukraine, there will be no Jews in Ukraine, it will be the end of our history there. So these are people who really dedicate their lives to saving other people for real. Like they're dying there. So the soldiers that I knew, not everyone is alive already by now. So that's actually another direction of help, is like paying for funerals, for example, or giving money to families who lost their, husbands and sons in the war. So I have people who like donate money to me specifically for army. They're patriotic people. They're people who really believe in that and are ready to support army. So that's a big part of my work, is finding supplies for army, either buying them in the United States and sending to Ukraine, or finding them in Ukraine and sending them within Ukraine. So again, I have like a networking of people, the volunteers who know where to find these supplies, the ways to transport them if it's being transported from abroad. For example, I'm still doing that, but I buy tourniquets, medical tourniquets in Lithuania, and then there are volunteers who deliver them to Lviv, and from Lviv they deliver them to Kiev, and in the Kiev I have a friend, a volunteer, who puts the supplies in the car, and he drives the car to the front line and he gives the supplies to army, and then I get photos and videos from them, and it's very, maybe heartwarming is not even the right word, but like it means so much to me to see that these are the soldiers who are fighting in the war and they receive supplies from us. Like these are real people and I know them, and they would say, like, record the video for me, or say, like, Alisa, hi, and I don't cry, but I want to cry when I see those videos. So this is a big part of my work as well. So I think I'm going to stop here, and I think I see some things in the chat, but I will also put in the chat my link to my Instagram account, because on my Instagram account, I put updates about what I do almost daily, not daily, but close to, like, several times a week. I put like short 1-minute videos where I'm telling, like, today I did this and that, So if you're interested in that, then you can follow me and see what I'm doing. But okay, I know I spoke for quite a long time and I said a lot, so let me just see what I see in the messages. Okay, so this is not a question and I'll respond to it later. Okay, so I guess if you have no questions now, you can either like raise a hand or... Rabbi Betsy, do you have a...
So you can use the raise hand signal in here, or you can put your question in the chat. Just make sure that you hit the return key so that then the question posts in the chat. And you can also unmute and jump in, because nobody is right now. So I think after the first one does, we'll have even more questions. But as long as I have the floor, this is not the first time I've heard Rabbi Zilbershtein speak about this. She gave a presentation very, very early in the war as we know it through JTS, and I watched that and I was blown away by what she was already doing. And then we spoke and I learned a bit more. And, this is somebody who was just finishing rabbinical school and, as she put it, dropped everything to literally save people through her network. And it's really just amazing. And I want to say really thank you for being somebody who's facilitating this work of keeping people alive and supporting the good effort that we have to make. And this is a community that cares very much, that gives very much, and that really does what it can. And to be able to connect with somebody like you who really does have, if not feet on the ground, people who have feet on the ground that are connected with you, is really very empowering for us to be able to find these ways to help. So thank you.
Thank you. I have to say that, yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
Thank you, Rabbi Zilbershtein, for what you're doing, as well as your fascinating address. I'm given the dangers and problems. I'm interested in where you are right now that enables you to do this, and it sounds like you go back and forth between Europe and the United States. Your English, American English is so good. I'm also wondering if you've spent significant time here, because you have very little of an accent. But mostly I'm interested in how you manage this from wherever you are or how much you travel.
I do not travel at all. Well, first of all, I cannot leave United States. I'm in New York right now. That, you know, my visa doesn't allow me to leave United States to travel. If I cross the border, I won't be able to come back. So I do not travel. I stayed in New York all of the time. I am a graduate of the Jewish Theological Seminary, so I spent 4 years in the United States. I just graduated, just got my smicha as a rabbi like a month ago. So I guess that's the sense. But I don't travel at all. So that is what I'm saying, that the technologies are amazing in this. Like you don't need to travel, actually. You can organize all of that, but like sitting on your couch.
Thank you for, how were you able to get here? Or at what age?
4 years ago.
Oh my goodness. Thank you.
So Cynthia and then Louise.
I want to say that I find your story inspiring and compelling. And I think that our silence initially when you asked for questions was because I think we were all fairly stunned and processing your story. I'm very grateful to hear your firsthand testimony. Many of us actually have relatives and ancestors from Ukraine. You probably know that. And I would be interested in knowing if you can sort of briefly, even before the war, sort of what was Jewish life like in Ukraine? I'm ignorant. I have no idea how many synagogues were still there, how many are still standing. Are there other rabbis practicing in Ukraine? It sounds like you've really used the Jewish network to help people. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about what that community looks like.
Thank you, Cynthia. It's a great question. So Ukraine, as I mentioned, it has a very long history of Jews living there, as I said, more than 1,000 years, at least as of we know. Like obviously they lived there before, but our first mention is about 1,000 years old. And Jewish communities are very developed in Ukraine. There are Jewish communities in every major city, and they're usually, several of them. As there are a lot of denominations of Judaism, I'm sure you know. So in Kiev specifically, I am a member of conservative community, Masorti community in Kiev. I mean, I was before I came here, and I am now, though I'm not there at the moment. It's called Masoret, and it's led by Rabbi Reuven Stamov. There is also a Reform community led by Rabbi Duchovny. There are a number of Orthodox and Hasidic communities. So obviously we have Chabad community that is led by Rabbi Asman. Then we have Karl and Stolen Hasidic community that is, all of these communities, by the way, they are like in walking distance from where I live, like all of those. We have the community from people from, so in 2014, when the war began, there were parts of Ukraine that were occupied already, right, by Russia. So, probably heard about Crimea and about Donbass. So there are Jews from that areas that relocated at some point to Kiev, and they have their own like community that is closed. Like you cannot enter it unless you're from that part of the country. So they have their own community. We have secular kind of a community or secular Jews, not only non-denominational, but like cultural and secular Judaism. We have a secret Kabbalah community as well. There are lots of communities in other cities. For example, the Jewish center in Dnieper, I believe it's like the biggest Jewish center actually in the world as a building, like as a complex. So the Jewish life is very diverse. And as I said, in every major cities, there are several communities typically, but also there are a lot of smaller places which are pilgrimage places, like, for example, the grave of Rabbi Nachman in Uman, where Jews from all over the world, they come every year for, Rosh Hashanah celebration. There are like thousands of Jews coming to that. But I mean, throughout the year, they also visit. There are other graves of different tzaddikim, Hasidic leaders that are spread all over Ukraine, because Ukraine, as a lot of your ancestors, and relatives from there. So also our kind of a Ashkenazic Jewish heritage is all from there. All Hasidut is from Ukraine, right? From Ukraine and Belarus. So there are a lot of graves of famous tzaddikim where also people would, go for pilgrimages there. So, and Uman is very interesting place. It's like a little Israel. Like everything is in Hebrew, written in Hebrew. Like the whole city is kind of, it's the main attraction in the city. So if you go there, like everything is in Hebrew. I mean, in the district that is around the grave of Rabbi Nachman. So yeah, it's a place. Ukraine is a place with very long Jewish history. So there are a lot of communities and Jewish life there. And this is why I actually came to United States, because I was living in Kiev. I kind of decided to get education here, to become a rabbi and to go back to Ukraine to develop our community further. It's just like I cannot go there right now because there is war. And we decided that we are going to stay for a while in North America for the safety reasons. Though it's a complicated also decision, but not going to go in details right now. But otherwise, we would be in Ukraine right now, and I would be working as a rabbi there. Today.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Great. So we'll hear from Louise and then Don and Kathy. There is one question in the chat as well about what people can do outside of giving money. But let's go Louise and then Don, and just know that question's waiting in the chat and maybe others will come too. You're still muted, Louise.
No, I'm trying to, okay, there we go. Rabbi, thank you for both your talk and for the work that you're doing. It's encouraging to know that sending money is the best way that we can help, because that's what we've been doing. It's felt like all we can do, and it has not felt like enough. So thank you for making me feel better today. So I did know that the Ukrainian Jewish community is quite developed, quite diverse, not surprisingly. But what I'm wondering about is whether there has been resentment of the sophistication of the Jewish community in Ukraine, of the Jewish community's ability to help its members. Has there been resentment on the part of non-Jews that Jews are so well organized that they can quickly mobilize and help each other? So it's not exactly an anti-Semitism question, but I guess that's thrown in there as well. And I'm also wondering if the Jewish community has been able to help non-Jews as well, non-Jewish Ukrainians. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. And I did not clarify that I help non-Jews. There are very, very actually few Jews in the like the stories that I told you, there's all non-Jews. Like I would never differentiate, first of all, because I think that this is a horrible thing to do, to choose like if you're only helping Jews. There are actually Jewish Jewish organizations that help only Jews, and I'm very critical of them. And if I have a chance, I always tell them what I think about that. I very much disagree with this approach. Majority of the people that I help are non-Jews. There are very, very few cases where I actually help Jews specifically, because it's an interesting question, actually. Why? Because I guess because Jews are a minority within the country. Jews are actually in a little bit better position than regular Ukrainians because of our status. We're usually middle class. We usually have a little bit we're a little bit more financially secured. We have a little bit more opportunities to go somewhere. So And there are Jewish organizations that that help Jews specifically. So this is their job. I don't interfere with that. They're like buses, especially in the beginning, there were buses that would evacuate Jews specifically. I was very critical of that as well. There were, special organizations that would help Jews on the border. So Jewish organizations, a lot of them worked very effectively, actually, especially in the beginning of like helping Jews specifically. But I don't do that. I help everyone. And yeah, is there any resentment? First of all, non-Jews don't know about Jews and what's happening within their communities. Like, how would they know that there are Jewish organizations that help Jews? Like, how, like, that's within our world. Like, they don't know anything about, Jewish communities. And again, when I'm helping people, I do mention that, for example, if I send money to volunteers, I mention that this is coming from Jews, because I think that this is, this is truth and this is important. Like, I had a woman from Poland, from Polish Jewish community. She gave a very generous donation that allowed us to buy 2 cars for army. And she wants to remain anonymous for the value of tzedakah and Jewish tradition, that she doesn't want her name to be like praised in that. So I cannot tell you her name, unfortunately, although I would love to do that. So she, gave us like $7,000 to buy this car specifically for army, because she also believes in that the army needs a lot of help. And when I donate this money, when I transfer this money, of course I say that these are the money that are coming from the Jewish community. Like, I wouldn't, hide it as a secret. But other than that, like, people wouldn't know what's happening within our communities. There was a resentment about Israel not accepting Ukrainians. That was a resentment for that. Kind of less important now, because now nobody wants to even try to go to Israel, because Israel was not welcoming Ukrainians. It was not really welcoming Jews as much also, but almost did not accept any Ukrainian refugees. So, but like, as I said, right now, that's not even, there are bigger problems than that, but in the beginning, there was a little bit resentment about that. Okay, so there was.
So Don and Kathy, and then there was one in the chat.
Okay.
So I wanted to ask, with your support of the army, is there any concern about the neo-Nazi history of the Azov brigade in particular, or any parts of that? Ukraine has not always been the most sympathetic country to Jews, going back into World War II and prior to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very important, and it's a very complicated question, actually, about the, the history of Jews in Ukraine, and the perception of Ukraine in and reputation of Ukraine, I guess, and the perception of Ukraine in the Jewish world. So I'll start with that, and then I'll go to Azov. So first of all, for some reason, and I did not really know that until I started to talk about Ukraine with, American Jews specifically, there is this idea that, Ukraine was like a Nazi kind of a country that persecuted Jews, and like the anti-Semitic country, which I don't entirely understand. Like, where does this come from? Like, Ukraine was a part of Soviet Union back then. So it was fighting with Nazi Germany. It was not a part of Nazi Germany. Never was. It was not a collaborator with Nazi Germany. It was a country that actively fought in the war against Nazi Germany. So it's not a, it's not a part of that. There were collaborating countries, obviously, with Germany, but like Ukraine is not that. Of course, when Nazi Germany occupied in Ukraine, it started to prosecute Jews and kill them, the Holocaust and everything. You know that story, I'm sure. that there were mass executions of Jews, you know, and which basically destroyed the Yiddishkeit, like the Yiddish speaking Jewish world. But that was done by Nazi Germany. So there were obviously Ukrainian collaborators, like in every country that would collaborate with Nazi Germany, but that's not a Ukraine in general. And as we know in these countries, typically like Poland or Ukraine, there were large amount of Jews. There were people who, you know, hated Jews and collaborated with Nazi Germany. There were people who were saving Jews, you know, righteous of the nations. So they're typically they're a proportionate amount of those people. But like, I don't really entirely understand how did it happen that in this kind of a perception of from the Jewish community in the United States, Ukraine is seen as like a Nazi country that was like killing Jews. Like, I'm not saying that I'm not saying the Jews were not killed there or that there were no collaborators. Of course they were, and it's a very painful history. But like, it wasn't a Nazi country. It was a country that fought with Nazi Germany. And I always remind that, you know, in Holocaust, 6 million Jews died in Holocaust. There were Soviet in Soviet Union, 20 million died in the Second World War. So don't forget about that as well. So these were people who fought Nazi Germany, and you know, they sacrificed their lives for that. So that's one thing. Then there is another thing. The history of collaborators, Nazi collaborators in Ukraine, and why did it happen? And again, we don't have that much time to talk about it. It's a very complicated history. There were definitely groups of Ukrainian nationalists who were anti-Semites and who did persecute Jews or executed pogroms and all of that. Again, these are, of course, minority of the people. They were such people, really. Like, I just wouldn't judge the entire Ukraine by, these few people who did that. Why they were collaborating with Nazi Germany is another very complicated question. They were collaborating with Nazi Germany because they were against Soviet Union. So because it was a place where Nazi Germany and Soviet Union would actively fight, and people who were against Soviet Union, they would collaborate with Nazi Germany. Not an excuse for them in any way, but this is just a historical kind of a context of why this happened. And I wish and I hope that this is going to happen. And actually, this is, again, part of why I wanted to be a rabbi in Ukraine. I hope that in the educational system of Ukraine, there will be more education about Holocaust, because most of Ukrainians just don't know about that. It's not that much a part of the school education or university education. That's why our Jewish products are so important, because we study Holocaust and we teach about Holocaust, and we hope to raise awareness, hope that there will be a better discussion within the country. Now it's not a time for that, but this was part of our work before the war. And, there is a lot of things that I'm still hoping going to happen. And about Azov, it is a concern. There is a kind of a media representation of Azov as being a Nazi, kind of a nationalistic troop. It is not at that time like it used to be. Again, it's not, I'm not defending them. I don't know actually much about how did it happen, but they were, they were nationalists. Doesn't mean that they were anti-Semites, doesn't mean that they were actively against Jews, but they were nationalists. It changed over the time. Now Azov has nothing to do with that. I guess it's another thing about their, public kind of representations and why that happened. Again, not defending them, but it's not a concern right now. It's not a concern that people who were, in Azovstal, in the Azov, steel plant, the people who were trapped there, that they were Nazis or that they were anti-Semites. These are the soldiers and defenders of Ukraine, and there is nothing in their ideology at the moment that would like say that they're Nazis, but it is a concern. I do not particularly work with Azov. I work with other brigades and troops that are not connected to that one specifically. So for the people I know, I can guarantee you that they have nothing to do with Azov. But you know, again, it is a very complicated political subject, and as I don't know anyone myself from Azov, it's very hard for me to judge because the opinions about them are very polarized. If you try to do a research online, you would have two opinions: either they are all Nazis or that they're not Nazis at all. And I don't really even know how to evaluate that. But I can guarantee you that as of today, Azov is not a Nazi type of a troop. These are, you know, Ukrainian patriots that are defending Ukraine from Russian occupation. I hope that answers the question. It's a very complicated topic, honestly.
Looking at the hour and looking at the chats, we see a couple of just some feedback, some reflections, appreciation for you, Rabbi Zilbershtein, for what you're doing and for what you're modeling. This relational effort to work through networks and to bring help directly to people through those networks is really inspiring for all of us. And I know that we do want to hear specifically how we might help in your efforts as we wind down the hour. And there was that one question still not addressed. Are there ways for people to help outside of financial contributions?
Yeah, so again, financial contribution is the best way to do that. I cannot stress this enough. There are other things that you can do, but this is the best thing you can do. Even if it doesn't appeal to you that much emotionally, I understand. It doesn't feel like, no, you just sent money. It doesn't feel, you know, like anything real. But this is, I swear to you, this is the best thing to do. What else you can do? For example, I have an Amazon list with, you know, it's like a gift list where people can order things that I put in this list and they will come to me. I wish I could show you, but there are like boxes in this area of the room, which I can make a package and I can send it to Ukraine. So within this packages, there are like baby supplies, there are some baby clothes, there are some female clothes and supplies, things like that. If you want to do that, you can definitely do that. Make a package and send it to Ukraine. If that's something that you want to do, this is less effective than sending money because things are like 5 times more expensive in the United States than in Ukraine. So with the same amount of money, you can buy 5 more, you know, the amount of supplies that you can buy in Ukraine, they'll be like 5, cannot find the word. Large amount of supplies you can buy with the same money in Ukraine, 5 times. That's what I was trying to say. Other thing that you can do, you can advocate actually for Ukrainians that are trying to find refuge in the United States. You know that right now there is a process of refugees coming to United States from Europe, but it's very complicated. There are a few people who can do that. The regulations of United States are very complex about that, but like you can either pay for their tickets, you can pay for their lawyers, you can provide them with, you know, a place to live. You can do that as well. And again, your political petitioning of the authorities in United States can also be very helpful. I think what we're going to do is that I'll send it to Rabbi Betsy the list of like things that you can do, and then Rabbi Betsy can share it with you because I have a list of like options of what you can do actually. We don't have time right now to put it in the chat, so I'll send it as a separate thing.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope that people will take advantage of these opportunities to give. I know this is a very giving community that has already given a great deal through our local Jewish Federation. And we sent many suitcases filled with medications for people who had just left Ukraine. And we understand that our responsibility is ongoing and we're always looking for ways to be helpful. So thank
So,
you.
can I say something again? This is very important, and you don't have to kind of trust me. You can find someone else with whom you can do it. But like, again, sending money to organization is great, and I'm sure that you've done that, and I'm sure that it was helpful. This is less effective than sending money directly to people. So if you trust me, you can send money directly to me, and I will send it directly to people. This way, it's like 1, 2, 3. It is like from you in people's hands. This is the most fast, effective thing to do, because I do not get paid for that. I don't have staff. I don't need to, have like elaborate documentation. So it's not bureaucratic. It's actually very fast. I just have a Ukrainian bank account, and I can send money to people like that. So I'm not insisting that this is the thing that you absolutely must do, but if you want to do it, I'm open for that. And actually that's very, very effective.
Understood. And thank you for putting a sharper point on that. Well, it's important that we understand that while we want to participate locally with our efforts through our Jewish community, that there are more effective ways to help, and the need is great. And we also needed to hear you explain how our funds through Jewish Federations International are they're doing their work, and there are many people who are not touched by those funds. And of course, and you live by the principle that we are commanded not only to help Jews, but to help people who are not Jews as well. That's very clear in Jewish law, that we feed and clothe people, and we bury people of all faiths, and we do that knowingly and as clearly as a directive straight from Torah.
I absolutely agree. Thank you.
So thank you so very, very much for speaking with us, for inspiring us this morning. It was wonderful to spend this time with you. I am thrilled to have had an opportunity to introduce you to my community here. I'm only sorry that it's due to these circumstances, but really you are a role model for me and for all of us. And I hope that we are all inspired by what you shared to do even more and to keep doing it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And thank you for joining me in this early morning hour. I'm very impressed. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
I'm sorry it's ending so soon.
Thank you, Yashika.
Thank you. I'm wishing you a beautiful week.
Thank you.
Thank